Louisiana State Exhibit Museum in Shreveport. I'm Nita Cole, and I'm the curator here. And today we are in the Clarence Webb Gallery of the Caddo Nation, and we're going to talk a minute about the Caddo culture in Louisiana. The Caddo began living here somewhere around 800 AD and were in Louisiana until 1835 when they signed a treaty with the federal government to sell their lands. They constructed 3 ceremonial centers along Red River. One of them is the Caddo Ceremonial Site, which is located approximately 15 to 20 miles south of Shreveport. Another is the one called Crenshaw along Red River, and in between the two of them is Mounds Plantation Ceremonial Site, which you can see behind me along the wall as a mural that has been designed as part of this gallery. The Mounds Plantation Site is an enormous, over 1 square mile, and was used by the Caddo people for burials. And along with the burials, they included artifacts that we have in this collection and in this gallery. One way that the Caddo would have used Red River was to construct boats to travel in between Crenshaw, Mounds Plantation, and the Caddo sites. And because the distances are equidistant to each other and about 75 miles as the river flows, they would have needed a substantial vessel in order to do that. We have in our collection a Cypress dugout canoe that was made by the Caddo around 1000 AD. It is over 30 feet long, it's just under 10 meters. The dugout is in our collection, and now you're going to hear the fascinating story of how it came here.
Well, in 1983, I was on a fishing trip on Red River with a good friend of mine, Jerry Hale, and we had gone to the Kellys to borrow to get their key, because they always let us fish on their property, and they had a good launch, and we got the key from Kendall and Rosemary, and we was on a fishing trip. We was going down the river, and we was going from brush top to brush top, just like we generally fish on the river. And we was making one move to another. We was going down the river. I saw something sticking out of the bank of the river, and I didn't know what it was. I looked at it. I didn't even stop the first time. So we went on by. The more I looked at it, I realized it was man-made. I said, well, and I had no idea when I first spotted it. I knew it was a boat, but I didn't know the age of it or how old it was or anything. I didn't even know the value of it. I said, it's a man-made canoe. I realized way too big a job for me, and I told Kendall and Rosemary about it, and Kendall went and looked at it. If you would have saw what they was doing, it was work, and that's when they kind of took over.
Well, after John Paul told Kendall about it, then he came in and told me, and of course I really got excited, and I wanted to go see it. And I must say, I had never been on Red River before in my life. I'd been on the sandbars, but I'm not a water person. But I wanted to see that canoe so badly that I convinced him we needed to go find it. So we slid an old boat that had belonged to his daddy that had not been used for years, and it was sitting there in the pasture, and Kendall and Kevin and I turned it upright on Sunday afternoon and slid it down the riverbank. And we went down, and we almost did not find it. We began to just think, we're not going to find it. We saw the canoe, and we got so excited, pulled up. We didn't have anything to really dig with. We had a little shovel, and Kendall and Kevin would dig around it. They'd take 1 scoop of sand out, and 2 scoops would come in its place. So Kendall said, he said, John Paul's right, it can't be gotten out. And I said, Kendall, do you still have that pump that you used on the farm to pump water from the tanks into your tractors when you were mixing chemicals? He said, yes. I said, then we can make the river give this up. We can use the river against itself. We'll wash it out with the water. And he looked at me funny, and then he said, I think that would work. And so then we began to work to wash it out with the water from the river. And as Kendall would be at the back and we were washing the water out, Kevin and I would be down close to the river with some kind of shovels and little, like, we're very careful because we knew the shovels would damage it. But we had to keep a channel open because as the sand was coming down, it would build up and down. So that was our job, to keep the channel open while he ran the pump and washed the canoe out. For about 2 weeks, Kendall and Kevin and I worked on it off and on for about 2 weeks. And it just kept getting longer.
Friends, John Paul Hobbs had pointed out that he found something that he thought may be a canoe. And you could just see on the end of it, it looked like, it was kind of burnt. And so from that point, got interested in it.
The day, I guess it was August the 31st, I get a call from Claude saying, one of my contacts, he's a fisherman, says he's found a canoe on Red River. And he's gonna take me there tomorrow, and would you come with me? He got the boat, he took us down the river, and lo and behold, there was the end of a wooden dugout canoe sticking out of the riverbank. I called Dr. Schambach, I called Pete Gregory at Northwestern, I called Dr. Webb. And when I called Dr. Webb, there was sort of silence on the end of the telephone conversation, and he said, I already know about it. We had basically 2 boatloads of people chugged down the river, and Dr. Webb had said, I'll get there in the morning when we had scheduled a meeting. Well, that's when we first discovered that the Kellys had found it too, previously to the Wilsons finding it. So there we were, a group of people, and the archaeologists sort of swarmed the boat, taking pictures and examining it as close as we could. But it was, again, sticking out of the clay and mud, and it was only about, the bottom of the boat was only about 12 inches above the current level of the river. So after everybody looked at it, and what was, I think, that sealed the deal was the end that was sticking out had a step down carved into it, and it was charred. You could see burn marks.
We had a certain amount of it exposed by the time Dr. Webb saw it. And we had already discussed between the 2 of us that we didn't know how we were going to get it out unless we took it out in sections.
With Dr. Webb there supervising it and all, he left it up to us. He said they're doing a good job and they will get it tended to.
Since Dr. Webb had all the other findings accredited to him, that they knew his expertise in this field, and after he was on board with that, I feel like they were very comfortable with him overseeing us, and with as much as he was there and on site, I think that took a lot of pressure off everyone.
We measured off from the tip and marked the log. Kendall Kelly started cutting. So after about 15 minutes of sawing, the arm got kind of tired. So, and I took the hand saw and started cutting. He would saw for 15 minutes, and then I would saw for 15 minutes. We filled the boat half full of water and then tilted it up against the bank, and we had people holding the ends of the boat. We tied it into the boat.
Just after the cutting of the first 2 sections, putting them in my boat and moving them up. Mm-hmm. And then Rosemary got everybody going again, and it took a long time for them to get it out after that.
They put large pieces of styrofoam down in the cavities of the canoe and fastened that, and then put them in the boat just in case the boat capsized. Hopefully the styrofoam would help the canoe pieces to float.
Once we got it into the boat, Kendall's Landing wasn't that far
It wasn't
from
that steep.
where it was at, and we had been going up and down the bank there with some a truck, a 4-wheel drive truck. So as far as getting those first 2 sections up, those wasn't the difficult ones.
I know Dr. Webb was there, and I believe there was an archaeologist from the state, and my photographer, Tom Stanford from the Times. I even have a picture of us with it that I've saved throughout the years. I even have my notes that I've saved from that day. It's just been my all-time favorite story in 29 years of journalism. Mr. and Mrs. Kelly's intent from the very beginning was to share their find with the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum so that everyone in the area could see this piece of history. I mean, it's the real thing, And they hoped that children would learn from it and take up dialogue with their parents and realize how the Caddo Indians lived. I mean, it was transportation, it was warcraft, it was trading lessons, a variety of things that children could learn when they came to the museum to see it in real life.
Told them,
Your equipment to the house, and we have a place where you can build this tank. We had a barn that had a big shed on the side, so I went home and told Kendall, listen, you know, this is what they're planning on doing. They're coming out here, and they're going to build their tank here. So they drove up from Baton Rouge. Duke came with them. There were, I think, 3 people from Coastal and Duke, and they came up, and then we started the process of taking it out of the pit that was in our backyard. They built the tank. They were out there all morning and built the tank, and they ate lunch, and I cooked a lot. We were out in the country. There was nowhere for them to go
sand
eat.
is still in our house from all
I
this.
think they brought enough that day, and they melted the wax, and we put the water in the tank. Once we put the pieces of the canoe in the tank, then we put a certain amount of wax in there. We had to start with a very high ratio of water to wax. So then, you know, I told him, well, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. Y'all send us the wax, because they were, you know, him hawing around about, you know, we're going to have to come back from Baton Rouge and do this and do that. And I said, send us the wax. We'll take care of it. So they shipped us 2 drums, 55-gallon drums of that wax. And I would constantly call Charles Pearson, and he would tell us, you know, when to do these things. And we would have to take a certain amount of the water out of the tank and replace it with wax. And we did that until we had a 50-50 ratio
We,
of wax to water.
We
Yes,
did it.
I mean, we did it. We did. This is Mr. Barmore here.
He's in the blue shirt?
No,
Oh.
in the white shirt. He was
The
kind of
white
a
shirt.
large man.
Okay.
And anyhow, we loaded on the trailers, and probably all of these, if you just want to live through them, right, all of
Hold it
those are
upright.
of that,
There you go.
So that's in your yard, they're picking them up?
right, that's where it was out underneath the barn, and they're being lifted up, and then we come on until we actually get to the museum grounds
There we are.
and bringing it into, but see, there's the truck, they lifted it up over the steps, and we brought it in here. I borrowed fabric, I borrowed furniture,
Moving pads.
moving pads from Forrest Dunn. And we wrapped them up. Listen, I begged and borrowed and still, you can't believe.
Well, I just like nature and things like that, and just, it's hard to explain if you hadn't been on the river and fished on the river and everything. It just becomes a part of you. And this, being so old and just an Indian canoe, after John Paul had seen it first sticking out there, you know, if he wouldn't have told Kendall about it, I don't know what would have ever happened about it. But kind of grew up in that area and fished on Caddo and frog hunt and duck hunt up and down the river. As I say, Kendall and I used to duck hunt together all the time, and it was just seemed like it was part of me to be involved with it.
Caddo Parish, Northwest Louisiana, and the state of Louisiana are very fortunate to have an exhibit of this quality. We hope that you enjoyed watching the video, and we hope that you will in turn come often and bring your friends to view this wonderful jewel at the Louisiana State Exhibit Museum.